Open those Bibles up to 2 Corinthians 9. And in your discipleship and in your Bible knowledge, just let the Lord sear 8 and 9 into your heart regarding generosity. And whenever these times of giving and sacrifice come up for us, these opportunities, 2 Corinthians 8 and 9 have such wonderful, easy to remember principles for Christian giving. And so if you weren't here last week, I encourage you to get online and listen to last week's message. I think something like 10 main points, easy to remember regarding Christian generosity. And then today we'll start a whole new set that are just so easy and wonderful from this chapter, Christian generosity in light of the gospel. So 15 verses here we're going to plow through today, looking in verse 1. Now concerning the ministering to the saints, it is superfluous for me to write to you. Woo, if you were wondering if church is hard and if reading the Bible is difficult, then you come to a superfluous and it answers all your questions, right? Not necessarily a word in common usage, although I dare you start using that, right? In your daily life. It means exceedingly abundantly above or beyond extraordinary or more than enough. And so going into the second chapter regarding generosity, Paul is just really trying to encourage the Corinthians that the people who are starving in the famine in Jerusalem need your donation. And when you first heard about it, you were super excited to help. You made this great commitment to me. So Paul goes on in his missionary journey and tells Europe about the Corinthians' just excitement to contribute to the starving. And then Paul gets word that a year later, the Corinthians had done nothing to be saving up or setting anything aside. And so he's going to be addressing like, you guys are going to want to get rocking and rolling with this sometime soon, right? The Red Cross van is on its way through, and you don't want to be standing there empty-handed. And so he's going to do it very delicately and tactfully in the way that he urges them by saying the word superfluous, right? Superfluous, okay? When you break up the word superfluous, okay, he essentially is just breaking out I'm sure I don't need to remind you, but I'm going to take a chapter of the Bible to remind you, okay? And so just boasting about the Corinthians' generosity could come back to haunt both him and the Corinthians if it provided hollow because it was lacking their follow through. And sometimes we as Christian leaders, we can get overly enthusiastic. It happens to me. Oh, the Lord's doing just this great thing. We're doing this building project and it's finally starting and we're breaking ground and we have all the money. And it turns out we don't have any of the money, guys. I'm just kidding. We do. Like, well, that took a turn. But it does happen, like, oh, there's this great thing, and we're having this youth retreat, and we've got 50 kids coming, and there's 22. And so it's like, oh man, I might have been overly enthusiastic when I thought I had these commitments, and they didn't follow through. And so Paul says in verse 2, for I know your willingness about which I boast of you to the Macedonians, that Achaia was ready a year ago, and your zeal has stirred up the majority. And so if you feel free to get your phone out and just Google Paul's missionary map and look at the images, and you'll see that in Greece, you had the region of Achaia down south, which consisted of Corinth and Centuria. And then up north, you had Macedonia, which spread into Europe. And you had churches like Thessalonica and Berea and Philippi, okay? And so Paul says that excitement that you guys had from the south People up top up in the north heard about it, and you stirred up the majority. You were so zealous about helping the people from Jerusalem that were like our fathers in the faith. They had shared with us in spiritual things. Now it's our chance to share with them in material things. It's a very biblical concept. And so, man, a year ago, I told everyone that you were ready to go. You were rocking and rolling. And it stirred up mostly everybody, or the majority. Notice he didn't say everyone was stirred up, because it's in a culture that generosity to the poor was actually not really a thing. The Greeks and the Gentiles there, they knew that, man, if I give to the poor, I'm not getting anything back. Maybe a thank you note in the mail, right? But what do I get out of this? And so it's absurd to give to the poor. But when the gospel began to transform the culture there, people started to see, oh, we have a generous God, and now that's moving me to be generous. But this was like baby steps for this whole part of the world. And so only a majority had been stirred up yet. But I like majorities. That means you win, right? But now their desire to do so had been dwindling down in Corinth. Back in chapter 8, verses 10 through 11, and this I give advice. It's to your advantage not only to be doing what you began and were desiring to do a year ago, but now you must complete the doing of it, that as there was a readiness to desire it, so there also must be a complete out of what you have. So that was just from last week's verse, last week's chapter. A whole year ago, you were gung-ho, and now you got to actually do what you were gung-ho about. It reminds me, I don't know if there's anyone here that's a Jerry Seinfeld fan. I got to go see him in Bend this year. Lots of fun. But Paul right here sounds like that clip of Jerry Seinfeld with the rental car reservation. It goes something like this. He goes on a trip, shows up at the rental car counter, and he says, hey, I'm here to pick up my midsize. And the clerk goes and looks and comes back and says, well, I'm sorry, we have no midsize available at the moment. Jerry says, I don't understand. I made a reservation. Do you have my reservation? Yes, we do. Unfortunately, we ran out of cars. But the reservation keeps the cars here. That's why you have the reservations. And the clerk says, I know why we have the reservations. I don't think you do. If you did, I'd have a car. See, you know how to take the reservation. You just don't know how to hold the reservation. And that's really the most important part of the reservation. The holding. Anyone can just take them. And that's the case with Paul here. Oh, the Corinthians were commitment. Oh, we're so excited to give. And Paul goes on out and tells everyone they're excited to give. They made the commitment. It's the actual completing of the commitment that matters. That's where the Corinthians were falling short. Verse 3, yet I've sent the brethren, lest our boasting of you should be in vain in this respect, that as I said, you may be ready, lest if some Macedonians come with me and find you unprepared, we, not to mention you, should be ashamed of this confident boasting. So Paul says, I'm going to go ahead and help you out by sending a crew to help get this thing a-going. And that way, when the Red Cross van comes by to pick up the generous donations and the Macedonians get out who'd been stoked by you, they don't see you standing there with nothing but pocket lint to put in the box, right? And he says, that would be embarrassing for me. And then there's just this great little spot. But more embarrassing for you. And I'm just trying to stop some sort of embarrassing matter to happen that would put us all to shame in this situation. So the Corinthians were very familiar with people who were called pledge dodgers. They had built a big auditorium in Corinth, and people who didn't follow through with their pledge, their names were engraved in the side of the stadium in Corinth. So those of you that promised to give to the Pine Theater rebuild a few years ago, you really wanted the golden horseshoe, but you never gave. Well, now your name is written in the bathroom with a Sharpie. You're a pledge dodger. Okay. And so Paul essentially is unspeakingly saying, you don't want to be pledge dodgers. And you know that's just kind of dishonorable. Verse 5, therefore I thought it necessary to exhort the brethren to go to you ahead of time and prepare your generous gift beforehand, which you'd previously promised, that it may be ready as a matter of generosity and not as a grudging obligation. So start preparing ahead of time so that it's all ready. Nothing worse than just getting rushed and you don't have anything together and there's pressure and stress and you're sweating, and then you begin to feel like it's some sort of an exaction from you rather than just a free gift that you want to give. You'd already previously promised it, and now it's time to give. And now we get to the first principle of Christian generosity here, and that is that it might be given as a matter of generosity, not as a grudging obligation. So whenever the Lord is calling us to give of our resources, our time, our energy, our money, man, let's purpose in our heart that we are working on out of generosity, not out of grudging obligation. So let's pull a couple of these words apart. Generosity, or if you're King James Version, your Bible would say out of the bounty that we've consecrated. Willing to give unstingingly, essentially. And that's how the Lord desires us to have, giving from a good heart, not from, and I appreciate the contrast here, not from grudging, right? Not being a grudgingly giver. That speaks of resentment and ill feelings that are even strong enough to justify retaliation. And then the donation van came through and they wanted our stuff and they made me go through my garage and just get it. And I'm going to follow that van down. I'm going to pull it over. I'm going to get my stuff back. That's what Paul's trying to avoid, right? So not out of grudging mindset, but, or even out of obligatory or obligation, as if you're bound to a payment, and then there's a penalty given when you fail to comply. Maybe the positive side of obligation would be a duty or a responsibility, which is good, but not out of grudging obligation where you feel bound to the payment, where it's some sort of extortion. Moffat translates it this way: not as money wrung out of you. And so we just really, when you come here and the Lord's doing stuff and we have great opportunities to be moving in ministry locally, regionally, globally, and it's just the reality. It's how the world works. Hate to break it to you. To have movement of the gospel, resources are needed. Boots on the ground, hearts that are encouragers, money that can be spent for the ministry, and resources. It's just the way that the world works. And when we do bring these things before you, we don't want you to be feeling like it's wrung out of you, though, like you've been squeezed dry or had your arm twisted. And it's our giving, opportunities to give are never tax or levies, but opportunity to ornament the gospel with our generosity. And, so not giving out of grudging obligation, but obligation in itself isn't bad. The French have a saying, and it's one of the only French words I know, and it is noblesse oblige. Noblesse oblige. Nobility obligates. Okay, essentially it comes from what Jesus said in Luke 12:48, the second half of the verse. For everyone to whom much is given, from him much will be required. And to whom much has been committed, of him they will ask the more. And so the Lord has been so good to us. The natural response of our heart should be, I have a duty and an obligation to now turn that around and be so good and generous to others. It's been said, if we give grudgingly, we approach giving as I have to. If we give dutifully, our approach is I need to. But if we give thankfully, our approach is I get to. And start changing the way you think of things with that, right? Start thinking about any way that giving is necessary, time, money, resources. I get to go to minister in these different ways or to be involved in these different ways. It's been said generous giving only comes when it's voluntary and not coerced. And so how does Paul develop the Corinthians with a happy spirit about giving here? He does what Barrett said is a lyrical account of the blessings associated with free and generous giving. And so from verse 6 on, there's this lyrical approach, just a beautiful, kind encouragement that God is going to provide so that you can provide. So let's look at it in verse 6. But this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. And he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. So those of you that are into sowing, and it's time to just really start getting the thimble out and the needle. If you're going to just sow a little bit, no, we're not talking about sowing, right? Different kind of sowing. Oh, yeah, the metaphor of the farmer, something that the people from Achaia would understand. And it's something that doesn't take much. I mean, I am not a gardener. I barely can grow the grass at my house. But I know this much. The more you toss out, the more you get back, right? It's pretty elementary. All right, so if you're gonna sow stingingly as a farmer, we're gonna save some money this year. We're gonna set the drill on 1/4 amount, and we're just gonna drive around the field. And when it comes times for harvest, don't be surprised when there's nothing there, when there's 1/4 of the yield. But the farmer that's just like, you know what? I'm throwing all this seed out here anyways, and I'm not the one that makes it grow. The whole process is trusting God, like somehow this thing falls down on the ground and kind of gets covered with some dust, and then it dies and started growing into the ground, and then God causes it to grow up and produce stem and fruit and all of these. The whole thing's a miracle from the first place that doesn't depend on me. So we're opening this bad boy up to 100%, and we're going to make a few rounds here, okay? The same is true with our Christian generosity. We get so worried about, I can't give, it's already tight, it's already hard. And we did get this, but we're not gonna be able to go to Cabo. We're not gonna be able to go to, Hawaii, or for some reason, New Orleans is in my mind right now. So, we're not gonna be able to do it if we give. So let's turn it back and we'll just give a little bit. And the Lord's like, hey, if all you want back is a little bit, then just give a little bit, right? So here's number 2 of our giving principle today. He who sows sparingly will reap sparingly. He who sows bountifully will reap bountifully. We don't want to scrimp. We want to be willing with our sowing. And with that, there's bountiful blessings. Now, I don't know if you followed, nowadays almost everybody's I'm a TV preacher. Camera there, camera there, camera there. Okay, but back in the day, the TV preachers have been known to be charlatans, right? It's just classic that TV preachers are part of the health and wealth and prosperity movement, which is very dangerous for the gospel. And with that, you'll often hear verses like this taken out of context, that if you want God to bless you, you've got to sow a seed. And so individuals will send in a big check, hoping to get something back to pad their bank account and build their kingdom. And sadly, that rarely happens, okay? It's also just a misunderstanding of how the economy of God works anyways. God doesn't bless us so that we can get all fat and sassy with our luxurious living, but he blesses us so that we can turn and then bless others. And then he blesses us more, and then we bless out more, right? This is a testimony of myself that I love my grandpa. I had a dream about my grandpa last night. Really love him and miss him. Died in 2017 at 97 years old. He was a rancher that built a ranch out of the dirt. He had an 8th grade education and built a very large ranch down in Klamath Falls by Bonanza. Okay. Literally, the show was made about my grandpa. But Chris Newell, Chris, you were there. 8th grade education, but did so well, was very successful until he lost that great grace of trusting in the Lord to make it great. And then it began to go downhill, and there were droughts, and we went into debt. And there was a lot of blame placed on everybody, but no extreme ownership taken by ourselves until we were down to just $250,000 and we were going to lose everything. And so Grandpa, who'd been watching Teflon Dollar on the TV, and decided to go down to California and take that last $250,000 and go on TV and plant the seed to be blessed so we could win our ranch back. And we lost it all. Except that the Lord ended up using it for good. Sometimes it's better to lose it so that then he can have all of you. And so that would be just a gross misunderstanding of this scripture about sowing bountifully, reaping bountifully, because the end is never on us and for ourselves. We are to be distribution centers, not warehouses. So as God's blessings come in, we want to just like, oh, this is so great and so precious. And I just love the security of having all the shelves full. And the Lord's like, if you could just open up the doors and put conveyor belts at them so that you can just be sending out those blessings, I'm going to be dumping it in all the more. Send out, dump in, send out. See if you can remember that. That's today's message title, Dump In, Send Out. Okay? Well, look at what Malachi chapter 3, verse 8 says. I mentioned it last week, but now I've got the reference in front of you. Will a man rob God, yet you've robbed me? And then they respond, in what way have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. You are cursed with a curse, for you've robbed me. Even this whole nation, bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. And try me now in this. This is the only place in the Bible where God says to test him. If I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you such blessings that there will be not room enough to receive it. Test me. You think you can outgive me? You can never outgive God. A few other verses I'm just going to you. Proverbs 11:24. There is one who scatters, yet increases more. And there's one who withholds more than is right, but it leads to poverty. The generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters will also be watered himself. The people will curse him who withholds grain, but blessing will be on at the head of him who sells it. Isn't it just incredible? The economy of God is so much different than the way we think in the world, right? The Lord is just like, hey, guess what? It's almost like a little riddle or a parable. There's one that the more he gets rid of, the more he has. And then there's one that the more he keeps, the more poor he is. What are you pulling a switcheroo on me here? It's the economy of God. And if you're not going to be generous, that puts bitterness in the hearts of other people towards you. But if you're generous, it causes everybody to love you. Proverbs 22:9 says, he who has a generous eye will be blessed, for he gives of his bread to the poor. I like that. Have you guys heard what the kids call today the bombastic side eye? Have you heard that? You see it at the gym, okay? You're all pumping iron and someone else is there and you're like, I wonder what he's thinking right now, and it's called the bombastic side eye. You'll notice people doing it at church. You're walking by. Okay? Let's replace the bombastic side eye with the generous eye, right? Do you know people that have that? They just have that generous eye. They're always looking for ways to be generous. You just know when the call is given for help, let me guess, it's this family again. It's this lady again. They're always so generous. And the Lord would have us, I keep doing this. The Lord would have us have an eye for generosity, okay? Galatians 6:10 says, therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially to those who are of the household of faith. This is an interesting principle. While we are generous when opportunities come up in the community, there's special precedence and priority that's given to people within the church family. And so it's just an interesting New Testament principle. Isaiah 32:8, but a generous man devises generous things. It kind of goes with the generous eye, doesn't it? This guy has got a generous eye, and he's a generous man, and he's always thinking up cool, generous things. Like I think of the Candy Cane Lane. Like somebody had to sit down and see a problem, and they probably were foster parents themselves, so they've probably been thinking of it, experiencing it. But they saw a problem, they brought it to the Lord gave vision, and they just acted on that vision, and the Lord's blessing it. It's incredible. And so I love that there's people that just, you know what? There's a felt need in this area and in this area and in this area. Well, let's go after it and ask the Lord to provide for that. And he's always faithful to do it when the glory is all about him, okay? I think the Candy Cane Lane glory is all about Jesus, but I wouldn't mind a couple candy canes out of the deal later either, you know what I'm saying? Now, let me give you another point of giving that's not from 2 Corinthians 9 today. Sorry, I'm jumping out of order, but it's from Proverbs 3, and the principle is give when it's in the power of your hand to do so. So do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it's in the power of your hand to do so. Do not say to your neighbor, go and come back, and tomorrow I'll give it to you when you have it with you now. That's convicting? So often you do have that kind of confrontation with the request for help, and you're like, I know if I can figure out some way to delay this, it'll actually get me off the hook. And the Lord just says, hey, right there, you got the $5. They're asking for the $5. Just don't worry about it and just give it. It's not going to be a problem for the Lord, and it's not going to be a problem for you. Just regularly for us, I mentioned last week, we get people know of our missionary involvement, so we get lots of requests to help missionaries. And I know for me, like, I'll be like, oh, yeah, I need to get the money to this cousin's daughter of mine, and so I'm going to hang her missionary photo on the fridge, and we're going to do that. And then like 3 months goes by. Hey, Uncle Rory, just wondering if you got my letter. And oh yeah, pictures on my fridge. I'm totally going to get to it. My Venmo account, I got to put my password in and stuff. And then like 3 months later, hey, so I'm in Guatemala and we ran out of clean agua and was wondering if you ever got your password put in there. It's just like time goes by. I was convicted this week of like, I told a Nepali guy that I would do something back in March, and I haven't done it, and mostly just because time goes by so fast. And so this week I was like so convicted studying this, and I reached out. I'm like, I'm gonna work on this. Don't you worry. I'm worrying. It's been 6 months, but this time don't worry, okay? So we get the cards and we get the requests. One thing that I would just put out there on a practical matter, we get requests, and my wife being the CPA, tax accountant, investigator that she is, nothing gets by her. She looks up the financial reports of organizations that are asking for money, and these are big name organizations, and I will even say organizations that I love. Some I'm not too fond of, some I love. Like love. And we're just like, man, I love it. I'm giving. And she looks up the organization, and these organizations have, in one case, $33 million a year slush on top of all the expenses paid and all the maintenance to buildings and properties and everything. 33 million over a year for years and years. This is regular. So I just suggest give when it's in the power of your hand to do so, but also be prudent to do your due diligent investigating to where you can just say, hey, I love what you're doing, or I appreciate what you're doing, and I want to support maybe even you as a person, but I'm just going to tell you now, they don't need it. And there's other ministries and missionaries that do need it. And now I enter the plug for your local Calvary Chapel, and how we have missionaries that we support, ministry that we free 2 slaves a month as a church and give them a goat and food and money and a shipment back to their family so that they can start a new life. So there's other things that we're giving to, and these are organizations that could use it. So, rabbit trail much? I think so. Verse 7. So let each one gives as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for the Lord loves a cheerful giver. So, point 3 here, give as you purpose in your heart. Again, the word is not grudgingly and not out of necessity or some type of reluctant obligation. And then our 4th point of Christian generosity, is that the Lord the Lord loves a cheerful giver. So when you're giving, enjoy it. Be a cheerleader while you're giving. The Greek is, the Lord loves a hilarious giver. Ha! Hilarious. Isn't it great how we can't outgive God? And I'm just going to, watch, honey, drop it in the dad box. Whoa! She's like, we don't have it. Shh. We have it. The Lord's going to multiply. Okay, so have fun with it, right? Lindsay, have fun with it. Okay, get a kick out of joining the Lord's work. Be what Romans 12 says is a liberal giver. He who gives, give liberally. That doesn't mean necessarily that you vote blue while you're doing it, but be a liberal giver, right? Too soon? I thought so. That was bad. Poor taste, all right? God loves a cheerful giver because this is precisely what God is, a cheerful giver. In verses 8 through 15, we're just going to blow through these and we're going to just enjoy verse 15 for a second because it's like the cherry on top of the sundae. Verse 8, and God is able to make all grace abound towards you, that you, always having all sufficiency in all things, may have an abundance for every good work. So Paul's addressing any worry that we might have when it's time to give. Hey, don't worry. God is able to give all grace towards you so that you could have abundance. He's going to just supply abundantly and have sufficient. You're going to have sufficiency in all things. This abundance for every good work. It's so good that the giving that God does to us is not to land on us, but it comes out from us out to others for abundant good works. That's so neglected in the church. The church thinks that God's generosity ends with me, and I'm telling you now, it never ends with me. It doesn't even end with this local church. It ends with the gospel going out into the world so that every tribe, tongue, people, and nation can know the saving grace of God and be saved and worship him. And so the chief end of all giving is the glory of God and worship among all the peoples, tribes, and nations, okay? It's been said, money is like manure. Stack it up and it stinks. Spread it out and it helps things grow. Just spread it out, guys. Fertilize, right? This Christmas, just give everyone some fertilizer. Verse 9, as it's written, here we go, it's fertilizing. He has dispersed abroad. He's given to the poor. His righteousness endures forever. It's a quote from Psalm 112, verse 9, and how the Lord is just in the business of just rapid spreading his grace to people, and he uses us to distribute freely. And as he does this, his righteousness endures forever. That tells us there are spiritual benefits when we are generous to others. Verses 10 through 13, we see the fruit of giving. Now may he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food supply and multiply the seed you have sown and increase the fruits of your righteousness. So the more you're giving out, you can just trust it's coming in to give it out. There's a rhyme. There was a man who they thought was mad. The more he gave, the more he had. And that's just the Christian economy of generosity. The problem with being tight-fisted is that a closed fist prevents us from receiving anything from God as well. Martin Luther said, I've had many things in my hands that I lost. The things that I placed in the hands of God, I still possess. You guys remember in Luke chapter 12, the parable of the man with the barns? We can relate around here in Prineville, right? He said, man, I had a great crop. I've got a bumper crop. He says, so I said to myself, I'm going to tear down all my other barns and I'm going to build bigger barns so I can store more stuff in it. And I just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And Jesus says, fools, take heed and beware of covetousness. For a man's life does not consist in the abundance of things he possesses. And there's this great quote by David Barrett, I think it was, who said, it apparently never crossed this rich man's mind that he had plenty of storage in the mouths of the needy. If you're looking for somewhere to put your resources, put them out there with people who need it. Watch the Lord continue to flow it in so you can flow it out. Verse 11, while you're enriched in everything for all liberality, which causes thanksgiving through us to God. Do you notice there at the end the word thanksgiving through us to God? It shows a result of our generosity. People are thankful. In verse 12, the administration of this service not only supplies the needs of the saints, but also is abounding through many, here's this phrase again, thanksgiving to God. You know, there's a certain holiday coming up this week. I can't quite put my finger on it. It's Thanksgiving. How great to be in this passage referencing hearts pointed to the Lord with gratitude for all of his goodness. Those hearts pour out to others, and then those hearts all point upwards to the Lord with gratitude. In verse 11, we have thanksgiving to God. In verse 12, we have the needs of the saints are supplied, which creates thanksgiving to God. In verse 13, we have another notch above thanksgiving, which is glorification. God is glorified as the lost are saved, while through the proof of this ministry, they glorify God for the obedience of your confession of the gospel of Christ and for your liberal sharing with them and all men. When the Jewish Christians in Judea see that Red Cross van pull up and they find out all of this benevolence that we received was from a bunch of pagan Gentiles who had just recently come to Jesus, it tells me that there's a work happening off in those far off lands. And now I have a heart for those people to be praying for those far off lands because we're brothers. Paul is essentially saying. Verse 14, and by their prayer for you who long for you because of the exceeding grace of God in you. When we're generous to others, we're thankful. There's thankfulness. And there's prayers out to the generous one. It reminds me of a woman in our church named Margaret Guthrie. Now, none of you have ever met Margaret Guthrie, but she's a part of our church. How so? Well, she is an ill lady who is a shut-in, unable to leave her home. She literally has filter zones before you get into the living quarters. And when you visit, you have to put on special clothes and not wear deodorant, which is a problem for some of us. And you have to go through the filtration process just to see her so you don't bring perfumes and pollens in. And I am telling you, this woman is the Corrie ten Boom of our day. She is the salt of the earth. She's so precious. She doesn't miss a service. She's always watching online. And then she's always sending Chris and myself and Lindsay emails, praying for whatever we've been talking about, praying for whatever we're going through. She's a gift giver, like packages in the mail, awesome Bibles, pastor's appreciation cards. I got a birthday card the other day. And then my little girl, Tatum, broke her hand, and you'll see she's got a little pink cast on. And she sent Tatum, $15 just to encourage her in her pain. And this is a woman that calls Calvary Prineville her home, and she's just overwhelmed by what God's doing here, even through the internet line. And now she gives out, and I just wrote her this week, just a long email, like, Margaret, you are such a blessing. And when we talk about you in our home, our family is just praising God that a woman who's never even been to our church, she's more a part of our church than some that come all the time. And her generosity just causes our hearts to swell in thankfulness that God changes hearts and makes us kind and makes us loving and makes us thoughtful and intentional and purposeful in how to reach out to other people. And I just said, I'm teaching this week on this, and this is what's going on in 2 Corinthians, and it's you, Margaret, it's you. And she wrote back, new phone, who dis? No. Last verse. She's got a sense of humor, Margie. Last verse. stand with me. We're going to stand so that you know I'm ending. Rhonda's like, my fingers are getting sore. Last verse. Think you can memorize it? It's the last part, our last point on this series on generosity. Thanks be to God for his indescribable gift. Why should we be intentional about how we can help the poor and the hurting and the works of the ministry going on around us? Why should we be thoughtful and purposeful and really check our hearts so we're not begrudging, just covetous in the way we keep stuff for ourselves? Why all of this? Why 2 chapters of it? Why 2 Sundays of it? Because of Jesus, right? Because he is the greatest giver. We praise the Lord trinitarily today when we've said, praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, 3 in 1. Well, here we have, praise be to God, the Father, for his indescribable gift of his Son. That's how generous he is. For God so loved the world that he gave. He's a giver. The wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is salvation in Jesus Christ. He's a giver. Always a giver. This is the gospel crown of this verse that motivates us for any of it. Remember last week, it was verse 9. For he who was rich became poor, that we through his poverty might become rich. That's the motivator. That's the diesel. That's what causes us to go, that's why I'm gonna open up my home. I've got an extra bedroom. I've got a bunk bed. I'm an empty nester. I've got 3 empty plates at my table. And there are 3 kids coming through my email this week who are a sibling set who don't have anywhere to go. No one is loving them, and I'm right here. I do not think that the proverb is ignoring this when it says, don't say no when it's in the power of your hand to say yes. It's not just talking about money. People are in need, kids are in need. And I just want to invite you, as we had the Candy Cane Lane thing, it just stirred in me to just spur up this church and stir up this church to consider being a foster parent. You guys know what we've been through. A year ago, I was bawling in front of you because of the painful stuff we were going through. You know it. And we took our lickings and we kept going. It's painful. In February, we got a Valentine's Day present of an 11-year-old boy, right? And he's been with us since then. And this is a boy who loves Jesus, but had never been to church. Bless God for the Good News Club after school. This kid's never been to a church, and after school, he's got nowhere to go as a foster kid, so he just walks over to the Good News Club. They preached the gospel to him. He got saved, memorized all the books of the Bible, still never had come to church. Then gets dropped in our care, and the Lord just opened up this door for discipleship for him. And this boy has never had a dad. And the Lord's been getting to use me in his life to work disciplines of a godly man in him. And he's just got such a sweet heart that's so receptive, and he's just like, okay. But it is like, man, the Marine Corps at my house, you know? And it's difficult. I was thinking as Jamie was talking during the Candy Cane Lane thing, I was a little hard first service. It's like, it's so hard. It's very hard, but it's very easy too. That's what's crazy. Like, God provides the ability. And everything we've been through legally and going to court and fighting the system and watching out for the best interests of kids, that's all painful. But we've gotten to watch God provide attorneys out of thin air, professional witnesses out of Manhattan, New York, funds to pay for these things, a judge that had favor on us. Like, we went through stuff that we never would have gone through and seen God's mighty hand if we hadn't stepped out in faith. I'm twisting the scripture to make you think it's about foster care. It's not about foster care. It's about generosity. And the selfishness in the American family is horrific. Just be open to what God has for you. If it's not opening up your home, reach out to a foster family to see how you can love on them and help provide meat for them and get toys for the candy cane lane and just bring encouragement and share your story with them and just let them know that you're with them. It's just one of many ways that we can be generous. I'm 7 minutes late, but we're still gonna close in a song, okay? 17 minutes of Rhonda playing the piano. That's actually a good way to spend a Sunday, just listening to that. There's a lyric in this song, in the chorus, that just says that God is so generous. And let's just enjoy that lyric, that all that we're thinking through today in this, why should I? Boy, that's inconvenient. I want to be stingy with this. But then we just remember, thanks be to God for his indescribable gift. He's so generous. Let's love on him for that today. Amen, you guys. Well, happy Thanksgiving week. So much to be thankful for. Make sure you're just spouting it off. Every day you're around that table, go around and say what you're thankful for. The kids love it. All right. Have a great week. Love you guys.